The Escape Your Limit podcast gets close up and personal with some of the leading entrepreneurs in the world of fitness and wellness. You'll find out what drives them, fuels them, and motivates them to give one more rep, even when no one else is counting. So now over to your host, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Escape Fitness, one of the world's leading functional training brands, Matthew Januszek.
Right, today we're here in very cold Peterborough, the head office of the Escape Corporation for the Escape Your Limits podcast with very good friend, very successful entrepreneur, Rob Moore. So welcome to Escape Your Limits podcast.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
And amongst other things, you've got 8 books out recently. Is that right? Best-selling books.
Yeah, I've just finished my 10th.
10th?
It's just gone to the publisher.
Oh, okay. And 2 Guinness World Records as well, is that right?
I broke 3. I don't know if I hold them anymore.
Oh, okay.
I had the longest individual speech and the longest team speech.
Right.
But each time you break them, someone somewhere in the world tends to break them back. But yeah, I've got 3 world records before.
Okay. And you don't know why it's called Guinness Book of Records, do you? Do you know the story?
No, I don't. No? Must be something to do with Ireland.
Well, no. I heard it on a podcast the other day, actually. And apparently, Guinness, the beer, they apparently wanted people to sort of spend more times in pubs, and they came up with this book, which was a pub quiz book. So it was sort of different questions and answers that people could use and talk about in the pub that they put their name on, and people would stay in the pub, drink more Guinness, and that was it apparently. So
creative marketing.
Yeah, very creative marketing. Yeah. So I didn't know that. I thought it had something totally nothing to do with.
Yeah, it sounds like it would just be a sponsorship, doesn't it? But
yeah, quite interesting.
Oh, there you go.
So Rob, you've obviously not always been as successful as what you are. Just take us back a little bit. Take us back to school. Were you always like super intelligent and successful at school?
I'm definitely not super intelligent. Okay, so when I was at school. My dad was an entrepreneur. He's been an entrepreneur his whole life.
Right.
Pubs, clubs, bars, hotels, restaurants, proper like hustler, if you like. Always carrying big wadges of cash around. Do you remember when the £10 notes used to be like that big? And I just wanted to be my dad, follow him around. He was really into cricket and rugby. So I played cricket and rugby at a decent level just to really please my dad and want to be my dad. So that's how I grew up. I've started a lot of things and got all right at a lot of things, but I've never really been great at anything. And I've since learned that actually makes quite a good entrepreneur. I could never really find my way in a job or a career because I'd never just be interested in it long enough, or I'd want to do something myself. I'd always have a new idea. But you'll know as an entrepreneur, I mean, you do podcasting, you do fitness, you've got to know sales, marketing, finance, you've got to be good with people, you've become an author and all, and as an entrepreneur, generally good entrepreneurs are sort of generalists. Not bad at a lot of things, maybe not a specialist in one area. But until I was the age of 25, that was also my sort of downfall, if you like. We obviously have been good friends for years, and you're big into fitness, and I was doing a lot of martial arts, and I'd start karate, and I'd get to sort of blue or brown belt, and then I'd get bored and start another one. So I did kickboxing, I got a brown belt, then I did another one, I did qigong, and I'd get sort of decent quite quick, and then I'd sabotage myself because I'd need to do something new. And I basically went my whole life like that, feeling like I wasn't a failure, but I wasn't a success.
Right.
And then my dad my dad was working in his pub, and I'd come back from university. It was another thing I started and then never carried on with. And I came back from university, and Mum said that Dad wasn't very well. She didn't know why, but there was something up with him. And I said, well, I'll come and work in the pub for a bit. And I was going to go to Australia to do architecture. Random decision, didn't do that. And I ended up working in the pub for about 2 or 3 years. And I saw Dad's health, especially his mental health, go down quite a lot. And I guess he was in his 50s at this point. And, in England especially, the pub trade has really died. Jim, I mean, you lived in Peterborough a long time. You remember when everyone used to go out in the nightclubs and all that. And now people like me are buying nightclubs and turning them into flats and, developing them. So that scene just died. And so because of that, business got really hard for Dad. and he had a nervous breakdown in his own pub full of all of his customers. And we managed to get him out to the front of the pub, outside the front door, and it was like -2. It was December 15th, which is his birthday as well.
Right.
So kind of like this cold. And the police got called because he had a carving knife from the carving, and they brutalised him. They wrestled him, they arrested him, they sectioned him, they put him in the van. We didn't see him, they wouldn't let us see him for a little bit, and it was months in Ward 5 at the old hospital here. And I was, 25 then? And I realised at that point I'd been given all the opportunities. My dad had sent me to school, sent me to university, he'd helped me buy my first house. He'd always championed me doing what I want in my life. And I'd never stuck at anything long enough to get good at it.
Right.
And I think I wouldn't say in that moment, it wasn't like, my whole life in that moment changed, but that was the trigger where I thought, I've got to step up here, and I've got to do something with my life, and I've got to get good at something to make my dad proud and to be able to achieve something and not give up on something. And it didn't quite all happen like that, though. So then I went and thought, well, the one thing I actually have been pretty consistently good at, I'm not good at a lot of things, but I was always good at art at school.
Right.
Way above I was the only person in the country at GCSE to get 100% at art. And so I thought, well, I'll be an artist then. Left the pub. I'll be an artist, and I tried that for a couple of years, and of course in my style, experimenting with in any kind of art, fine drawing, crazy, modern art, graffitiing houses and all sorts of shit. Can you swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
By the way? I just did. It's all right. And and then weirdly, the gallery owner at one of my where I was hanging some of my work, there was a property meet going on. And he said, hey, you should go to this property meeting. I was, I haven't got any money, I haven't got any experience, I'm an artist. And I went because I was curious and because he just kept hounding me. And I met my current business partner there, who's very different to me.
Right.
I'm more sort of maybe creative, ideas driven, I like to write, I like to speak. And he's very technical and analytical, and he likes to, so you might say one's left brain, one's right brain. And we hit it off. And he was the missing piece in everything, because the reason I'd not finished stuff is because I was over the start of it. I enjoyed starting it, I enjoyed creating it, making it real, building it. I didn't enjoy then looking after it for 10 years, or 20 years, or 50 years. And he's the sort of person, he loves doing something for so long. He doesn't like doing anything new, he likes doing something over, like the Warren Buffett, your compounding way. And so it was then maybe, 25, 26, where things started to get better.
Right.
And obviously since then we've done all right, our property companies do all right, and I've written the books, and I've got my podcast and everything else. And
just to sort of go on that, so you were an artist. Were you making money as an artist then?
Well, it depends on your definition of making money. I was selling paintings for probably less than I should have been,
right,
and barely paying my mortgage and getting myself in debt.
Right.
But that was as much because I couldn't manage money as much as it was because I wasn't bringing any in. When I used to make money, I used to go down and buy designer clothes, or go out to town and spend it on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I can't actually remember how much money I made, but I didn't grow any money. I just got myself more in debt. But that was because of bad spending habits and a lack of understanding of managing money. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But,
and was your motivation when you went into that? What was going through your mind? Were you thinking that I'm going to be an artist and this is going to be a way where I'm going to make money, or was money just not in your mind at that time?
Money wasn't in my mind at that time,
right,
and I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't make any. Actually, let's rewind. Money was in my mind, but all the bad things about money, the debt, am I going to be able to afford to pay my bills? I probably did think about money more than I do now I've made money, but it was all negative. But no, I went into artists because I didn't really know what else to do, having left the pub and seeing what happened to Dad, and knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I've written currently the best book in the world. I shouldn't say the best because that's biased. Currently the best-selling book in the world on money is my book, Money.
Right. What's that called?
It's called Money. Money. And I think one of the reasons I failed as an artist was because I wasn't able to delicately balance creativity with capitalism.
Right.
I wanted to do art, I wanted to be creative, I wanted to express myself, but then going and putting it in galleries and hounding, art dealers to give my work a go and negotiating in that side of the world. I thought that was a dirty, evil capitalist world. I just wanted to be creative and do art and listen to Rage Against the Machine, a bit of an anarchist. That's all good until you've got kids and school fees and mortgages and all that, which I didn't at the time. So no, I think that's one of the reasons I failed as an artist.
Right.
And if you look at artists who've really succeeded, who most people would know about their work, Tracy Emin, Damien Hirst, before him, people like Andy Warhol, they really embraced the business of art. In fact, Andy Warhol says that, art is very much a business and business is very much art. And he says that they're both a creative thing. And, those guys don't have a problem with selling for art for millions of pounds. I always felt if my art was more than a few £100, I would be ripping people off, not realising that, people happily pay tens of millions of pounds for art.
Do you think that's because you didn't value what you were doing, or you?
Yeah, ultimately it's because I had a low self-worth.
Right.
And I know that now by going on a lot of Tony Robbins courses and all that stuff that we've all done. And fear of being judged by other people. If I've got this canvas stood there that's 1 metre squared, and I know that's cost me £300 in materials and my time, and I say to you, that's 20 grand, I couldn't have done that. I'd just all the fear and what you're thinking of me and all the judgment going through, so I couldn't do that now because, your canvas there, that's your soul. Just like we're in your gym, this is your soul. Your passion has come through everything that's in this gym. But I couldn't put a price on my work because I had low self-worth.
Right.
And I needed to please people and I needed to make them like me. And of course, if my art was too expensive, they wouldn't like me. I didn't know all this stuff at the time. In my book, Life Leverage, I told a story of Picasso, who was one of the few artists of his time to make money while he was alive. Many artists don't make money when they're alive because, unlike Hirst and Emin, they don't embrace the capitalist thing. And he was, you can Google, research this story, it's quite a famous story. He was in a cafe in France and someone recognised him and they went up to him and asked him to give him a napkin and said, can you just do a little drawing and sign it? And he did a quick squiggle and signed it and gave it to this woman and she looked at him and he looked at her and she looked at him and there was that awkward silence and then eventually she said, okay, so how much? Because he was there so silent for so long. And he said 5,000 francs, which I guess with inflation is about 50 million francs now. And she went, that took you 5 minutes, what are you talking about? And he said, no, that took me my whole life. And that was what I didn't realise when I was an artist, when I was a pub landlord, when I was just not getting ahead. I didn't realise that everything I'd done in my life was part of my story and part of my price and part of my value. And property helped me change that because you understand intrinsic value in a property. You pay 100 grand for it, it's worth something because it's got utility, you live in it, you bring up your family in it. 10 years later, it's worth 200 grand. 10 years later, it's worth 400 grand. And so I guess I always had the creativity in me, but not the capitalism and not the sort of honour and respect of money and my value to bring that's monetisable. And then I think property and business taught me that.
Yeah. And do you think, just on that point, do you think that's one of for people getting into business in terms of how they price and promote themselves, do you think that that's something that a lot of young entrepreneurs also suffer with, in terms of underselling the value? If you think of fitness and trainers, do you think there's any similarities between you and your art and people who are, coming into that type of business as well?
It's probably rife in the fitness industry. I have a lot of people in fitness and martial arts who follow my podcast and follow my work. And a lot of them have doubled, tripled and quadrupled their price. Because, if someone said to me they're a personal trainer and they're 20 quid a session, I'd think, hey, shit, because they're 20 quid a session. What am I, 20 quid, that's nothing. Whereas I think the trainer thinks, well, if I charge 100 quid, people are going to say I'm a rip-off. But you only attract the £100 a session clients if you charge 100 quid. If you charge 20 quid, you attract 10 quid a session clients, who want 10 sessions for, they want a discount. So I think a lot of people think when they price themselves that if they were too expensive, they'd lose business. What they don't realise is they're too cheap. Because you wouldn't pay 20 quid for a personal trainer, because immediately you'd go, well, they haven't got any knowledge, any experience, what are they going to be able to teach me? Right. You'd probably spend, you might spend 500 quid on a celebrity trainer or whatever. Now, their knowledge might be 10 or 20% better. But, so I think, it's hard for a young personal trainer in that, if you're young and you just don't have knowledge of business and pricing and all of this, and, I read hundreds of books in audio form a year and podcasts we're always sharing, book recommendations, and I've just learned this over time. But ultimately, price equals value. So the value that you give to an individual or a company, should dictate the price. Now, fair exchange is where you put good value in and you're rewarded with a fair exchange price where you can have a profit margin. Unfair exchange is where you charge too much and rip people off, or you don't charge enough and you can't maintain your business. Because, like a personal trainer, if they're charging 20 quid or 50 quid or 100 quid, which is all too cheap, they've got to prepare it, they've got to do meal plans, they've got to prepare their sessions, they've got to invest in their own training, they've got to learn the new exercises, they've got to have liability insurance, they've got to travel there, they've got to travel back. Like, I hope my hairdresser isn't watching this podcast. I mean, not that I need a great hairdresser, but she charges 10 quid and she comes from where she lives to me with all of her equipment, sets it all up, cuts my hair and goes. And it's a tenner. Right. And I gave her 20 quid as a Christmas bonus and she was made up.
I better give out a number.
Yeah. If she gets a 10 quid for that, okay, it's only a buzz and it takes 15 minutes, but she's got to travel there. She's got to travel back. She's got equipment depreciation and all that's probably not factored in. Like in the research for Life Leverage, I wanted to look at some quirky industries where there is examples of people who've really busted the price range. And so there's one chap that cuts the hair for the Sultan of Brunei, £5,000 a haircut, and the Sultan of Brunei flies him from London out to Brunei, wherever he lives at the moment, cuts his hair, sends him back, and he gets 5,000 quid for that haircut. What's the difference between someone who can cut hair for 5,000 quid and someone who does it for 10 quid?
What is the difference then?
Value, price, experience, self-belief.
Right.
Understanding that the price you put on yourself is an expression of who you are, not underselling yourself. Sometimes you have to turn away business to win business. You have to turn away business that's cheap to win business that's more expensive.
Right.
When I used to start public speaking, I would go and do it for free because I felt like they were doing me a favour putting 20 people in the room. Now my minimum fee is 10 grand and I won't go anywhere unless I'm paid that fee. My mentoring fee is £50,000 a year. And it's like some people look at £50,000 a year, what do you get for that? Well, I've quite a lot of celebrity clients, people who are dancers on Strictly Come Dancing and other people that, I haven't necessarily got permission to name. But if I was £100 a month, then I wouldn't attract those people. They don't want £100 a month mentors. They want £50,000 a year mentors. And of course, there are people in the world. Tony Robbins, I believe, it's like a minimum £1 million down on as a retainer because you get the best.
Right.
I spent 15 years feeling around pub, architecture, art, property, to really sort of get a handle on this. And also inflation, your fees are worth half every 15 years because of inflation. So you've got to double your prices every 15 years. Just to keep up with inflation. So really, you've got to quadruple your prices every 15 years to have any kind of increase in margin.
But for you, obviously, look at your resume. It would make sense for someone like yourself to be able to do that. But someone who's probably getting started, do those rules apply to someone who's probably, they're trained up, they're getting to cut their feet. Can they really get away with doing that? Or
well, I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think you've got to have a standard fee, which is fair. So if you've literally just got an NVQ or whatever, then you can't be £500 a session. But you can always discount, you can't increase your price. Right. So, if you start at 20 quid and you do 10 sessions for 150 quid, you're actually 15 quid. Whereas if you start at 50 or 100 quid, you can discount there. They feel like they've got a bargain, but actually, you've just had a bit of sort of price elasticity manipulation where you've gone, okay, well, I'd accept 30 quid, so I'll offer 50 quid. So that's one thing. The next thing is you can have different levels. So you can go out and one-to-one people for 200 quid, but you can have an online program which is 50 quid. And I think the more modern personal trainer is embracing the leverage of the internet and social media and all that stuff. And my wife has a personal trainer. He's got a £100 online level, and then I think he's got a £250 online level. And then if you have him as your trainer, then you pay him a little bit more. Now, also what I do if I was a startup PT is you've got to look good. You have to look good, and I think that's really important in your business. You know, your fitness, your health, your leanness, everything else, that's bloody important. You know, your body is the ambassador. So there are some personal trainers that probably need to step that up. The next thing is I'd hunt out all the successful people and I'd say, I'm going to do 10 free personal training sessions for you in exchange for a photo and a testimonial. So I'd come to you if I was a personal trainer and say, hey, you know, like, you might reject me, but I'd at least have a go. If I go to the 20 most successful business people, or, you know, if I could get in touch with celebrities or whatever and, you know, try and help them out to get the photo, to get the endorsement, to get the testimonial, then the testimonial says, I train people like that, and then you up your fees.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, and yeah, when you start up, it's harder, and you probably have to work more, and you probably do have to give away some free sessions. If you're going to give away a free session, then you need to get something in exchange. So you need to get a good recommendation, a testimonial that you can use in the future, or you need to get access to more customers and clients. I definitely target people who have a good friend network or a good clique. That was something I didn't do very well as an artist, but it happened accidentally. So a few of my mates bought my work, I think just out of sympathy. You know, want to make sure Rob's not, you know, picking fag butts off the floor and licking people's fingers at KFC. You know, he's doing so bad, he's so poor. You know, but then their friends started buying it. Because, you know, their friends come along and they see the art on the wall, and that was the only way I really sold paintings, was through word of mouth. But you realise people are in these circles, and, you know, like people who are like each other, they like the same clothes, they like the same watch, they drive the similar sort of cars. So if I was a PT, I'd try and get in with someone who's well connected. I'd look after them for a bit and say, hey, look, can you recommend me?
Yeah.
And then obviously you've just got to keep refining your art and doing your thing and trying to be the best that you can be.
Yeah. So coming back to art then, so you artist met your partner. So what was the progression from that? Because I guess it didn't just, you know, you met a partner and it happened and you suddenly started a business. So how did you go from sort of that mentality, right, I'm an artist now, I'm going to be a property guru?
Well, I didn't immediately think that.
Right.
I think one thing that probably helped me get into the property space, as I said before, is I'll pretty much try anything. There aren't many things I haven't tried to do. And I said all my weaknesses in that regard before, but in this regard, it was a strength because I was prepared to try and get into property, even though I was an artist. And I remember exactly how it happened. The one great thing about being an artist was I had a lot of time because I used to paint late at night. So I used to do like an hour on the bag every day. And that was when I was at my fittest and strongest in my martial arts and had couple of competition fights and that kind of thing. So the one thing I did have was time, because actually doing art doesn't take that long. It's just all the getting through all your baggage to get the art out.
Right.
So I went to this networking meeting because I had time. I met Mark and then chatted to him at the bar, and he gave me a couple of book recommendations, and I read them because I had time. And I thought, I could get a look into this, and I went to meet him where he worked because I had time. And once I twigged, you know what, I should give this a go. My thought process was, well, I'll go and work for this guy for a bit. You know, I don't know how long it'll take. A bit like if you wanted to get into property, a good thing to do would be work at an estate agent on Saturdays or something like that to get the on-the-ground experience. And if you want to be a PT, come and work for you as an apprentice. And that was the attitude I had. I thought, I've got to look into this because I knew that property makes everyone rich. And that was the missing bit in me, the commercial bit. So I was obviously allured to that somehow. And I thought, well, I'll work in the day for him, see how it goes, a couple of days a week, whatever, and I'll paint at night. And I never did a painting again. And I ended up doing 50, 60, 70 hours because I loved it.
Yeah.
And, you know, quickly saw that, you know, property is something that's exciting, that I could get my teeth into, which solved the money part for me. So we worked in this company, and then maybe 9 or 10 months in, we both left and set up our company, Progressive Property.
Right, okay. And that was, what was that, buying and selling properties?
No, buying and holding. We've sold less than a dozen houses. We own or manage 720 around here. We've sold less than 10.
Right.
I don't want to walk down the high street in 20 years and look at all the big buildings that I used to own and sold.
Right.
You know, I want to look at them knowing that I've still got them.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental shift in my mentality, because I was always £200 a week paid by my dad, go straight down to the designer clothes shop in Peterborough Close and spend it all on Vivienne Westwood. Yeah. You know, that's what I used to do. I had very short-term thinking. But like, we've just bought a building in town that we're developing into. It could be up to 120 flats, depending on the planning permission. It's a big building right in the centre of Bridge Street. It used to be where Marks and Spencer's, opposite the town hall. And, you know, we've been thinking we could probably make £2.5 million if we sold that. But I said to my business partner, in 10 years, we'd have made 5 or 6 or 8 million quid, who knows? Do you want to walk down past that building in 10 years with your 8-year-old son and say, I used to own that? Or do you want to say, I still own that?
Right.
And so that's and I'm good at starting things, as I've mentioned. So I think the difference about me now is if I start something, I'll either finish it or I'll give it to one of my staff or an outsourcer to finish it.
Right.
And that's really was the inspiration behind Life Leverage was, I'm good at starting. How do I get people to carry on the work afterwards?
Okay. So there's similarities that, a lot of the people that I guess subscribe to this podcast and are involved with Escape in the fitness area. And so recently we met a lot of startups, entrepreneurs, trainers that have had this dream to open up their own facility. And one of the biggest challenges that most of them come up is how to, they're getting a certain amount of salary, which is great, but it's not enough to put down a lease and then to spend several £100,000 dollars to build it out. How did you go from an artist to then buying properties when you probably didn't have, I'm guessing you didn't have a ton of cash in your back pocket to do it. How did that happen?
Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting space. And if I was giving any inspiration to a personal trainer, I'd say be damn good at what you do and go and approach as many people you know in business as possible and put a joint venture proposal with them. A lot of your personal trainers that you have in this gym, they're using all of your facilities and they're wanting to set up on their own, but they don't understand about the expenses and the overheads and everything else. So what I did was used Mark's money.
Right.
So basically he never told me how much money he did because he's pretty guarded. But over time, basically every time I went out and got him pissed, it used to come out that he had another deposit and another deposit and another deposit. And I was like, well, let's go and buy some property then, and I'll have half. We bought 20 properties in the first year together. We started with his money. And what I brought was basically relentless energy, enthusiasm, drive and hustle, because I didn't have any knowledge or experience. And what he brought was knowledge and experience. And we just used to walk down the estate agent street all day, every day, trying to get deals. We got 20 in our first year, and I guess about the first 10 were funded with his deposits. Then he ran out of money, and he was like, Rob, I've run out of money, so don't ask me for any more money. And I said, well, what about your mum? And he's like, she ain't got any money. And I went to his mum, and his mum had a few deposits, so she put money in, and we went, and she had 20%, and we took 40% each. And then when she ran out of money, we went to Mark's stepdad, and he put money in and lent us some money. In fact, the first office we built, we bought opposite your office over there. Mark's mum and Mark's stepdad funded that. And we paid them 1% a month and then remortgaged and paid them their money back. So it's basically free for us. And then when all that money ran out, which was for about 20 properties, my nan passed away, my mum had an inheritance, then we used that money, then we used my uncle's money, it was the other half of the inheritance. So basically we were just going to family and people we knew, putting a proposal together. Now, I don't want people to think, oh yeah, just go and take money off your family, that's easy. I was serious about it. We were putting proposals to them. Right. We were signing contracts with them. We were giving them charge and title on the property. So we saw them as if they were like a business partner, not just like taking advantage of a family position, if you like. And so if I was a PT instructor, that's what I'd do. I'd go and look for all these cool spaces. I don't know if you're going to do any cutaways, but this is like it's a semi-industrial unit that every sort of dream of any gym owner is to have a gym like this. And if I was a personal trainer, I'd go and try and find people like you, and I'd say, hey, look, I've got this. I want to set up a gym. Back me. Right. Zumba. Zumba's a great story. You should interview the guys from Zumba. Do something a bit different. And do joint ventures with people. Have a business person, because fitness and business are often different, as you know.
Yeah. I guess similar to the artist thing, where you're an artist, but you might not be a business person.
Yeah.
Is that?
And actually, it's probably if you're really inspired in fitness, it's probably good leverage to have a business person with you doing all the business side of it. Right. So you can be great at the fitness part of it.
Right. Okay, that's good to know.
But I think fitness instructors who really scale and succeed embrace the business side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So with you had the property side, but then also I wouldn't call it diversified, but you'd built an element of expertise in buying property, selling, etc. Tell us a bit about then the training business, and again, sort of, drawing a few comparisons between how you utilize, and back to your life leverage book, how you sort of utilized or complemented the current business model you had with a different business, and talk a little bit about what that business is.
Okay, so we started buying property for ourselves. That's all we intended to do when we set up Progressive Property. We ran out of money. We thought, how do we scale this? People were interested in what we do, so why don't we pass on deals and sell them to other people? Instead of keeping them because we can't finance them, why don't we charge them a fee? Because everyone, who doesn't want to get into property investing? Who doesn't want to have a buy-to-let portfolio? So then we did that. And then when we thought, well, actually, we're selling a lot of deals here which are quite tasty, which I'd rather keep, because, you sell them for $5,000 or you keep them for life. So then we thought, well, you know what? We need to raise funds a different way. So people were interested in what we did and how we'd done it. So we started running courses, and I wrote my first book, Property Investing Secrets, which is this, I think this now is 4th edition that you can find online. And we started teaching people how to do the same thing. And there's huge demand for property all the time. If you look in the rich list, there's so many people in property. There's huge demand in the fitness industry. There's huge demand in marketing and social media, in tech. So it was a space where there was huge hunger. We just started teaching people what we'd done. And we, when I say we, Mark mostly, because he was in it a lot longer than me, but, he'd made all the mistakes. He bought overseas off-plan new build properties. He'd kind of had a how not to model. So we wrote about that in the book, because I think people like down-to-earth and real strategies, not just hypey, get-rich-quick stuff. So we were very real about what we were teaching, the downsides as well as the upsides, the warnings as well as the opportunities. So we went from books to a few courses. We did 714 courses last year, 714 days of training. My podcast had 2.5 million downloads this year. It's got over 1 million subscribers. It's been wild, how the training has grown, because I think there's a thirst for information now. I think people are getting it now with the access through social media and YouTube and podcasts and everything else, that information is a big commodity in and of itself. It's an asset. The people who know more in their industry, the influencers in this world, they're the ones that seem to be really successful.
Right.
And so the selling of information, the packaging of information, that's a huge business.
Right.
And we did 19 million the year before last.
And that's just in the
training business.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And I never even planned to do that. I just wanted to buy property, with Mark and I. It wasn't a plan. I never planned my podcast. We actually just launched a Bitcoin course. 500 people in 24 hours bought the course, because people need information.
Right.
And it's easier than ever, isn't it? You can learn at home, you can learn on the go, you can learn on your phone, you can listen to this podcast while you're working out. So I think they're great businesses to be in, when you can reduce the friction and you can give people information quickly and on the go. It used to take years and years and years to set up a business, and used to need big loans and massive overheads and retail space and and all that kind of stuff. You don't now. You need an iPhone, a payment gateway, maybe PayPal, and you need put some content out there.
Yeah. And so how does that model apply to different businesses, or does it apply? So if you think of whether you're in the restaurant, hospitality, gym, fitness business, what you did where you have your core property business and you're obviously learning about it, could that sort of thing apply to other industries, do you think?
I don't see why not. Yeah, apparently there's a famous DJ, is it Armand Van Helden? Who does courses on DJing.
Right.
And there's loads of, is there something that someone wants to learn? If you can help them learn that quicker, would they pay for that? That's the question you've got to ask. Because people pay for convenience, you make it easier for me. They pay for speed, get it done quicker. They pay for a reduced friction. Why do you queue up at VIP? Why do you get premium economy or business class or first class? Because you want that convenience, you want that lack of friction, you want to get places faster. And we're all getting overwhelmed all the time, and there's such a big demand on our time now. Uber, you're paying for convenience. Airbnb, you're paying for convenience. So I couldn't say that every single niche and industry in the world you can make £20 million, not dollars, a year selling them stuff. Yeah. But I can't imagine that there's many that there's not. There's that guy who's famous, Pimlico Plumbers in London. They do 40 million quid a year. And he's got like a full PR company, and most of his time now is just PR.
Right.
And so he's understood of information and marketing and, getting your message out there. And, who'd have thought a plumber could do £40 million a year?
And do you think that's an important thing that businesses, in terms of their marketing and promotion, they it's important to have that as part of the marketing mix, where there's some form of building their brand or reputation through, whether it's selling information or giving away information? Do you think that's important in this day and age?
Well, let me spin it back on the other foot. Why are you doing this podcast?
Well, I guess a couple of things. One is it's a good opportunity for people to understand what's behind our brand.
Yeah.
Where I suppose the relationship with our brand is very much, we sell great products, they look good, they last well. But there's a lot behind that. There's some interesting stories behind that. And then secondly, I get to meet sort of lots of people from around the world that all have very interesting stories.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, I sit there and hear the story, but it's to be able to share that story with other people around the world, and for people to sort of create, I suppose, a relationship and say, well, that guy and that company is interesting. I believe in where they're going, what they're about. And so it's a way, I suppose, of relating to people, communicating what our brand's about in a way that couldn't be done through, I suppose, an advert or a trade show.
So it's a gateway to your brand and a connection with your audience.
Yeah, I would say.
So I would say then, yes, that is what all companies should be doing. Like a business that doesn't make money and doesn't have customers is called a hobby, and that's assuming that you like doing it, because there's plenty of people who have businesses that don't like doing it. The way that you make money in business is by getting customers who pay money. And then, of course, you've got to manage that business through your finance and your accounts to make sure that hopefully you're left with 20% net profit margin, or if you're a bigger business like yourself, maybe a bit smaller a margin, but a fair margin. But it's the customers that you need. And this is rife in the fitness industry. There are a lot of good personal trainers.
Yeah.
There's lots of good personal trainers that work for you, work with you, who are ripped and fit. Like Foxy's got a six-pack on his face. This guy is mean. But they're probably not marketers.
Right.
They probably don't have hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook and podcasts and all that. They're probably not bothered about that. They want to sweat in the gym. They'd just ideally have 20 customers given to them. Yeah. But the personal trainer that will build a global brand, like Arnold Schwarzenegger did and all these kind of people, they're the people who reach millions of people. So embracing, personal trainers should be doing Facebook Lives. Absolutely should be doing Facebook Lives. Like really doing good sessions. And, what better testimonial for a personal trainer than seeing their clients' massive guns and putting out extra reps? So they should definitely be doing Facebook Lives. They should have a YouTube channel. They should be doing a podcast, I think. I'm really excited about the podcast space. I'm a bit of a veteran in the podcast space now. I've only been doing it 2 years. It's such a young industry. Some of the American people have been doing it 5 or 6 years.
Right.
But the great news about a podcast, YouTube channel, doing Facebook Lives is that's all free. You can build thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers across all these platforms, not pay a penny in marketing. You could put a massive ad in a newspaper or a magazine that costs you thousands and get no clients for it. So yeah, and you don't have to sell on it. It can be an awareness exercise. Hey, this is me. This is what I do. If you like me and what I do,
right, you'll
find me on here. So I never sell on my podcast, for example, other than myself and my ideas. But after my podcast, people go and Google me, which I own Google for my name, and they go on Amazon and they can see all the books I've written, and they can go on YouTube and they can go on Facebook and they can find all my pages and profiles, and then they get that second level of content, and then under there, the next level, that's when they can buy all my stuff. Right. So yeah, like you're spending a lot of your time. You can earn a hell of a lot of money. You're worth a hell of a lot of money to your company. Yet you're doing this, and for us, this is unpaid at the front end, but hopefully we'll be paid well at the back end.
Yeah.
And it's, like a lot of the personal trainers who are young, and I'm meeting personal trainers now who don't remember the world before the internet. Like, do you remember when you had to go in a bar and actually approach a woman and talk to them, and how shit scary that was because you were going to get blown out in front of all your mates? And now it's just swipe, 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 connect, swipe, swipe. They don't know that world, but that's also exciting. They know how to hack YouTube. They know how to Instagram. I don't not really understanding that well. I think it's so exciting to be a young fitness trainer, a young entrepreneur at the moment, but you've got to be all over it.
Yeah, yeah. And you've obviously got a wealth of knowledge, enough to do 10 books. Starting again from that artist, where did you go to get that information? Where did you go to learn all these things? Because you cryptocurrencies, properties, making money. It seems like a huge amount to get your head around. How did you go about that? Did you have a plan? Did it just happen? And
I write plans twice a year. So I do my net worth statement and my goals and my vision statements twice a year. I used to do them December and August. Now I do them November, ready for the next year, and August because it's quiet. And I have a look every now and again. But then once I've got the plan, I like to also be organic and let it happen. Because if you're too specific on the plan, well, someone's in the podcast space. Oh, it's not in my plan. There's this new channel called YouTube. Oh, it's not in my plan. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, have a specific plan, do it twice a year, but then be open and organic. So a lot of these things that you've said I'm doing, I've just kind of rolled with it as I've gone. The fundamental change for me was at school, I was forced to learn subjects I wasn't interested in, because that's what schools force you to do. And I'm not knocking the school system, but most of the subjects I wasn't interested in. So I didn't have a hunger and a desire to go home and read books and listen to audios. And then on December the 15th, 2005, when my dad had his nervous breakdown, I had a hunger to do something for myself. And so when Homer passed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad and passed me Think and Grow Rich, if he'd have passed them to me 3 weeks before my dad had his breakdown, I'd have gone, not interested. I don't like reading. But he passed them to me and I had a need and I swallowed those books up, snorted them, and I was, wow. And I was like, and I just got this hunger to learn. And the 2x speed button and Audible and podcasts now means I can probably get 500 books or podcasts a year in. So just learning all the time opens all these new doors.
How important do you think that is for anyone to be successful, to be reading? Or
it's the most important thing.
Really? Why?
It's the most important thing. The more you learn, the more you earn.
Right.
And I used to read nothing and make nothing. And the more books I get into, the more influencers I follow, the more I educate myself, the more I earn.
Right.
Definitely, everything is self-taught. In these last 11 years, of course, I've invested a lot in programs and mentors and courses, but, I've invested my money into that. It's the biggest thing. A lot of my mentors have said things to me like, the most important things in business will be the books that you read, the content, what you learn, and the people that you meet, and you find as you get more successful, you meet a higher level of person. And yes, they can introduce you to people, and that's great, but ultimately, when you meet a high level of person, you learn more from them.
Right.
So yeah, it's fundamental. And so any personal trainer can get a jump on anybody else by knowing more about diet, knowing more about fitness, knowing more about exercise, knowledge. And it's easier than ever to get.
And in your book, Life Leverage, you talk about mentors, and it's something we've spoken about before. But how do you, if you're a trainer and you are struggling, you've probably, maybe you're married, you've got a child, you're working as many hours as you can put in, and you probably don't have that extra money to spend to a mentor. What would people do that are in that position? How do they go about finding a mentor and sort of learn, getting someone to help them to that next stage if they're not in the position and they don't know those people that are successful?
Yeah. Okay, so there's probably 3 ways of getting a mentor. One of them is paying them. But there are some people I know who, maybe I'll catch up with once or twice a year, who I'd regard as mentors, some of them billionaires, no amount of money could I pay them for, but they would have lunch or dinner with me a couple of times a year. So you can find out the people who are out where you want, and if they mentor, you pay for them, or you just try and connect yourself with people or get introductions, and just try and go out for lunch or dinner. Great thing about the podcasting is you get to interview them. One of the biggest side benefits of a podcast is you interview cool people. And then John Barnes, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, just gave me his mobile number. He's like my footballing hero. And he's just like, oh yeah, I'll be upstairs in 10 minutes. Here's my mobile number, call me. And it's like, oh, that's cool, you know, and thanks to the podcast. So, you know, that's another way of doing it. And then another way of doing it is just thinking, who do I want to be like? Who do I admire? Who inspires me? Follow them on Facebook, follow them on YouTube, follow on Instagram. You know, they're all now, all the big players, not all, most of them are doing their own personal branding type stuff. You know, you follow The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He's massive, always doing videos. You know, he's an inspirational guy. You know, obviously, you know, even people in real estate like Grant Cardone, you know, he's got a big sort of personal brand, doing videos all the time, 9 posts a day on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So you can basically vicariously, voyeuristically, you know, from a distance, from the other side of the world, you can pick up stuff by following all of their work. And then as you get more successful learning their stuff, then you can hire them as a mentor. I think it's really important to have mentors. You know, there's a saying in England which goes, you know, it's good to learn from your mistakes. I think it's dumb to learn from your mistakes. I think it's better to learn from the mistakes of other people. You know, like let's say you wanted to learn how to go bust. Would you rather doing that by going bust yourself and learning about how to go bust? And hey, I'm learning how to go bust, everyone. So creditors, you know, everybody who's giving me shit, I'm just learning how to go bust. Or would you rather vicariously learn from people who go bust, who went bust in the recession, who've been bust twice and been a millionaire 3 times, asking them how they did it, what challenges there were, and logging it that way? I think that it's far better to learn from the mistakes of others and stand on the shoulders of giants. And when I was poor, I used to do everything myself. I was the opposite of leverage. I would do everything myself, including making all the mistakes. And now I like to learn from people.
Right, okay. So another thing you talk about in your book is this sort of trading hours for money, and I think that's the term. I've got it right. Trading time for money, and again, coming back to trainers in most cases, you know, there's a limit, even if they are the $500 an hour trainer. I was talking to a very successful celebrity trainer a few weeks ago, and you know, as he said, there's a limit to how much I'm going to earn, and then when I go on holiday, I'm not earning. So tell us about that principle in your book about trading time, trading hours for money.
So leverage is achieving more with less. So I leverage property by buying assets and having a half share in them with Mark with his money. So that's leverage. You hire a staff member, that's leverage, because they may be paid 25 grand, but they bring in 50 grand into the business. You have a PA, that's leverage, because they do all of your admin. You have a driver, that's leverage. You know, I have a driver that drives me around, and I mostly don't tell people that because they think it's some kind of opulence. But if I pay a driver 300 quid, my driver cost me 300 quid to go to Liverpool and back. And that's like...
You need an Uber.
There you go. Yeah, that'd be like 14 grand in an Uber. But the point is, he can drive me in one of my cars or his car, get a nice S-Class Merc or something like that. And if it takes 4 hours to get there and 4 hours to get back, I can do 8 hours of work. If I did 1 hour of work that makes 5 grand, and it's only cost me 300 quid to get a driver, I'm netting, you know, 5 grand, 10 grand minus 300 quid. If I drive myself, I'm losing 8 hours. I'm also arriving stressed and hustled, and it's someone else's responsibility to park and drop me off and pick me off here, drop me off to interview John Barnes, drop me off at the game because I went and watched the game, pick me up after the game and all that kind of thing. So people see things like hiring, staff, outsourcers, gardeners, cooks, cleaners, PAs, nannies, nurses. They see them as expenses. Yeah. I see it as an expense not to have them. My gardener charges me about 30 quid to come round and sort the garden out. It's not the biggest garden in the world, but it's big. Yeah. It'd take me about...
his number as well.
Sorry?
I need to get his number as well.
Yeah. Well, you did the gym. You guys did the gym in there in the garden. I would ruin that garden, and it would take me a week to do it. You know, like I have a chef who comes in, and they charge me about 30 quid to come in. I once burnt my whole house down trying to cook a chicken burger because the Liverpool game was on, and I just left it on. It blew that. I went 2 fire engines over it, burnt the whole house down. I had to move out. So I said that flippantly, but that's actually true. But the point is, should I cook, clean, iron, wash up, do all my own admin so that 10 hours a week I can go and find clients for my personal training business? Or should I spend 40 hours a week going out finding clients for my personal training business and paying these people? Now, before people say, oh, well, it's harder for me, I'm a startup, I haven't got the money. Yeah. It was harder for me, and I don't want to sound like an old bastard here, but there was no Your Man in India or People Per Hour or onlinejobs.ph when I started. You know, I had to do all the work for myself, and then the first person we hired was my mum and then Mark's mum. You know, and we just got really busy. But you can get an outsourcer now He'll cook for you, he'll clean for you, you can pay him by the hour, you can get an outsourcer to do all your receipts, or your admin, you can have bookkeepers, you can have coders, you can go on 99 Designs and get your designs for anything you want done, and you only pay for a result. You can pretty much outsource anything, just by going on the internet. So I think if younger or start-up fitness trainers embrace outsourcing and leverage, instead of thinking I've got to do it, find someone better to do it, you increase your hourly rate. Because you have to work out what tasks you do that generate you the most revenue. So for a personal trainer, it's having a £200 a session client. Everything else is worth less. So admin costs you £200 to do because you can't find a £200 client. So it's the opportunity cost of time. Right. And a lot of people are thinking what they're doing with their time rather than what they could have been doing with that time, the opportunity cost of time. And as you get more successful, your hourly rate goes up to 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. You ultimately divide your income by the amount of hours you work to work that out. And so I started to track that over the years and worked out, you go from some people are worth £4 an hour because how hard and how many hours they work, to £40 an hour to £400 an hour. The next thing then on this, and I think this could be a really big shift for most personal trainers, is yes, you do a session for 100 quid or 200 quid or even 500 quid or even 5,000 quid. You have to exchange that hour. But if you had 1,000 subscribers paying 100 quid on your online program, you don't have to do anything except maintain that site.
Right.
So you want to be thinking about leverage. And also, you have to geographically be close to that client.
Yeah.
You have to be less than 10 miles away from them, or they drive to you. Whereas you can have personal training clients all over the world. Like all these, there's all these remote classes. There's the Zumba classes, the Gracie, in the martial arts world, the Gracies, they've got a massive online training program. Now, they wouldn't have been able to train people all over the world unless they had this online program. So you should have like a £69 a month level, which is just videos. You do the videos once, and then thousands and thousands of people who sign up for the next 5 years pay £69 a month. You did that work years ago. Like every book now that I sell, I might write some books years ago, every podcast, everything. So I try and think, the time that I'm creating, is it an asset or is it an exchange of time? So the reason I agree, other than being your friend, I do this because I'm your mate, but let's say that I didn't know you, would I waive my 10 grand fee to do this interview? If this is going to be on a podcast and this has 10,000 downloads a month and this podcast is up for 5 years, I'd do it and I'd waive my fee because it's going to be there and be seen for months and months and months and years and years and years. If I ever do a talk, I record it and I use the recording so I can use it for years and years and years. So you have pure content that you've done once in videos for $69 a month. Then $129 a month, you maybe have the meal plans and everything else. And then $199 a month, and you do online weekly courses, and you maybe have accountability sheets that people fill in. And then £499 a month, and they do that and they have a couple of personal training sessions. And then all of a sudden, your rate is £500 a session because you've got the different levels.
Right.
And I think that's the way for a personal trainer to leverage.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you hire other personal trainers. So they come to you, I can afford £50 an hour, no problem. This is my trainer, my gold level trainer. I want my £200 a session, that's my platinum level trainer. You train them up and you have a share of their money.
Right, okay. So the key things are really sort of understanding where your value is, where you can provide where your time is worth the most, and utilising that time to the best of your ability, and getting other people to do those things that you could pay them to do less.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is then using your time by creating products that you can continue to sell when you're not, I guess, trading hours for money. Mm. Yeah. One more point about the book, and I'll have to find the exact terminology that you use to call it, but and this is interesting because certainly listening to a lot of what happens on social media, we hear a lot of people, particularly at the moment, talking about hard work, and I think you call it the hard work delusion. Mm. And certainly I hear a lot of people talk about you got to work hard, you got to grind, you got to put in the hours, the hustle,
the 16 hours a day.
Yeah, and I guess I'm sort of thinking about myself as you probably know, as an entrepreneur, it's not going to happen without putting in some hours. But I guess there's extremes. What's your view on can you work smart and still be effective? Can you work smart and hard and get what you want? Where do you sit on that, and how do you relate that into the book?
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of these American influencers talking about hustle and hard work and grind and sweat and all this kind of stuff. And if you're 22 years old and you live with your parents and you've got no overheads and you've got no responsibilities or kids or mortgages, fine, work 16 hours a day, put it in, because you will get out what you put in. So I'm not ever saying you shouldn't work hard. In fact, you need to work hard enough not to have to work hard. But what about if you've got a family? What about if you've got children? What about if you've got overheads? What if, mums? There's loads of mumpreneurs out there, and I'm inspired by every mum with what they have to, do raising kids. You can't do that. And so I think people should think smart as well as think work hard. I'll give you an example. So we just literally launched our online Bitcoin course. So one of my guys in the office who's in our innovation department who deals with all of our online platforms, he got all the content and they did all the design and got the online platform done. I didn't do any of that myself. I'm not a cryptocurrency expert, and I'm definitely not. I would never say that. Don't just go and put money in because I've said it. You shouldn't. You should definitely go and do your research. So I hunted out, because I wanted to learn this space myself, because this is the future. Blockchain, cryptocurrencies, this is the future of money, or a big part of the future of money. So I want to know about that, because I'm an entrepreneur, and I need to know about the future of money. So I did a lot of learning and research, and my goal is, who are the go-to experts? Because I can shorten my knowledge and learning if I find the go-to experts. So I found 4 people. One of them's an American guy I couldn't get in touch with. Another one is a Cambridge University lecturer who I just interviewed on my podcast. Another one is actually helping me. He's kind of a mentor because he's a JV partner of mine in property, but he doesn't want to be public-facing. And then I found one other guy who showed me his platform and his portfolio, so I joint ventured with him. Right. And so we marketed the course, he created all the content and delivered it all. Right. So I got this launched in a week, and I've been looking and listening and learning for months, sort of thinking, let's wait until this is real, or I feel that it's real. And we got it launched in a week, and I didn't create any of the content, I didn't upload any of the content, I didn't do any of the assets. I've been quite active on the social media, but that's because I've got time. So that's an example of working smart. Right. Working hard would have been reading every book, listening to every podcast, going on crypto courses, getting a crypto degree, doing everything myself, learning online marketing, and all that kind of stuff. So, I really believe in joint ventures and leveraging other people's skills. Now, of course, you have to bring something. You can't leverage everyone and you not bring anything to the party. And, we have a lot of followers and fans who are, ready to buy that. But that's a better way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
And like I said, if I'm going to speak, I'm going to make sure it's recorded all the time, whether it's a live feed or a public speech or a video, so that I can put it on YouTube and put it on podcasts and, put it on LinkedIn, etc. So it's an asset all the time. So working smart and leveraging is, if I'm going to spend this hour, how can I get a week, a month, a year, 10 years or 50 years worth of value out of that hour? That's leverage. I'll give you an example. One of the best ways to have passive income and leverage would be to write a Christmas number 1. Unfortunately, most of us can't, but Mariah Carey does bloody well every Christmas. And I don't know if you remember that song by Slade. Yeah, that famous song, 500 grand a year. They wrote that in the 70s.
I think Noel Gallagher's just re-recorded that as well, as
right. Well, because he wants 500 grand a year passive income. So that's leverage. He's thinking, they didn't necessarily do that intentionally, but a book is leverage. Right. Like, if you're going to get information out of you might as well write a book and put it on Amazon, because then it's an asset. Now, when I used to write books, I used to put things like interest rates and stuff like that in, which change all the time. So it wasn't an asset, it'd be live and then it'd be out of date. So now I write books, which like Think and Grow Rich and The Alchemist, which are in the top 10 best-selling books in the world, 80 years later, they're still relevant. So that's the way of taking a book and turning it into an asset. And now I sell 2-to-1 audio to physical books. Right. So I'll create the audio. And on Life Leverage, I got an audio, a voiceover artist to do the audio. Yeah, right. So, and so if you want, you could transcribe the book by just talking into an audio device, having someone transcribe it, someone else edit it, someone else upload it, Amazon host it, Amazon sell all the copies, a voiceover artist to do the voice for the book, and You've just done the ideation of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people are listening to all these Americans going, hustle, hustle, work 16 hours a day, sweat, sweat, sweat. But that's not the smart way.
Right.
You know, your biggest value in your business will be ideas, strategy, vision.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does a typical day look like for Rob Moore then?
So I get up about 5:15 if I haven't been woken up by the kids. They've just built a new Costa Coffee drive-through that opens at 5:30, which is perfect. So I'm there 5:30 every morning. And then from, 5:40, I always have podcasts on the way and the way back in the car, so I can get that extra bit of learning in, and on 2 times speed. And then I do strategy, vision work from until about sort of 7:30 on my own. You know, like sometimes the family are up, but I've got a few rooms around the house. So if they're downstairs, I can be on level 4. And if they're upstairs, I can be in the basement. And they know that that's my time. And so I make sure that all the strategy, the vision, the ideation, the creativity, the $1 million or the £10 million idea or whatever are done at that point. If I'm in the middle of writing a book, because I wrote 2 books last year. I'm going to go for 2 books a year. My publisher's contracted me for 4. I'll do that in that time. 7:30 till 7:50, I'll putt with Bobby. He's got a putting green in his bedroom because he's one of the best 6-year-old golfers in the world.
Was he? He's junior.
Well, yeah, he's the youngest person ever to get a hole-in-one. Right. He was 3. He's got 4 hole-in-ones. He played in the World Championships when he was 5 for the under-6s. He played in the 6-year-old World Championships, although we pulled him out halfway through just because he wasn't quite enjoying it. He was 2nd in the British Championships, playing rubbish. If he'd have played well, he'd have walked it. So he's done good on the golf side. I try and. It's another great thing about leverage is, if you've got assets that are paying passive income, you can spend time with your family. Like, people think I work really hard, but I don't. I work hard in like 30-minute or 1-hour blasts. Really, I'm like a circuit trainer. 30 seconds, and then 5-minute rest. Right. And so I work hard, but for about 4 short bursts a day. And the rest of the time I'm thinking or spending time with the kids or meeting cool people. Or I do a lot of interviews now. I did an interview for the Daily Mail yesterday, which is a big newspaper in the UK, and do a lot of podcast interviews now and that kind of thing. 8 o'clock till 8:30 I do my calls. 8:30 to 9 I do live feed videos on my social media platforms. And then from 9 till 10:30 they can book meetings in, but I can only have meetings booked in at 9 to 10:30. 10:30 till 1 we keep free, so I write or just go back home. 1 till 3 is backup time. I do my interviews at this kind of time. I have dinner with the kids every night. I sometimes work out early in the morning, but other times I like to work out sort of. I'll go and do a workout now at sort of 3:30, 4 p.m. Always have dinner with the kids, and then I like watching autobiographies and informative educational films on. So I don't know if you've seen Williams. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
The Founder and Warren Buffett one.
I've seen The Founder, yeah.
Any successful person. There's I just watched the Lady Gaga one. There's the Katy Perry one that's just come out. The Conor McGregor one is brilliant.
Oh, I've not seen that.
I love watching films on successful people because you can always learn something, even in the spaces that I'm not that into. But I just think if someone is like Katy Perry level, she's got to have learned stuff and done stuff that I can learn from, even if I'm not necessarily.
Yeah.
Her music is not heavy enough for me. And I tend to do that in the evenings, and then I repeat.
What time do you go to bed then normally?
Oh man, so 8:30, 9 at night. Go to bed early because I
right.
get up early. I don't think it's possible to get up at 5 a.m. and stay up till 12 p.m.
No.
And do that for 40 years.
No.
It might be possible to do it for a few months, but
yeah. So where can people find you? I guess you can Google Rob Moore, but what's if they want to sort of get more, learn more about your property, your currencies, yourself? What are some of the areas they can go to?
Okay, so my podcast, The Disruptive Entrepreneur.
Okay.
We've done 215 episodes so far. I wrote a book called Money, and I wrote a book called Life Leverage. They're on Amazon and Audible. And then if you just search my name, Rob Moore, on Facebook or Google or whatever, you can find my blogs and my live feed videos and that kind of stuff. I put quite a lot of content out there, really enjoy it, anything about business.
You're on LinkedIn as well, I think. You do some, what do you call them, podcast? Not podcasts.
Rants normally, just normally rant, Yeah, one of my videos about what time you get up in the morning got 300,000 views.
Yeah, I saw that one actually. That was
a bit crazy.
The 5 a.m. club, was it?
All this 5 a.m. club bollocks, yeah, because there's all these people getting up early on Facebook telling everyone what time they're getting up instead of doing something useful. And it's like, I used to think as an entrepreneur you had to get up earlier, earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. Now look, if you're an early riser, you should, and you can do good work in early when the world is still asleep. But getting up early and going to bed late, it's not sustainable.
No.
And if you've got kids and you want to live till you're 100, then you've got to find your own times in the day. And some people work well at 9 o'clock at night, and some people don't want to get up at 4 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
You're not hustling at 4 a.m. if you're posting on social media about it. So
No.
I don't know why that video went viral. It was not my best
It was an interesting one. I struggle because I've just moved to the West Coast, and I'm thinking, well, is it a regional club where if you're in California, can you not be in the New York club? So you've got to get up 4 hours earlier, but I guess I have to agree with you. You've got to fit it in the time that works for you. I think it was one of the fashion designers, Yves Saint Laurent or someone like that sort of said, doesn't matter what time I get up or go to bed at night, as long as I get my 8 hours sleep, I'll move the clock accordingly. And I guess that's probably more of a sensible thing to do.
We've talked about this a lot, haven't we? And I know you've tested a load of stuff, and like that daily routine I just told you is my daily routine every day. And I spent probably 2 or 3 years testing it. Right. So sometimes I was getting up. I tried to get up at 4 a.m. to be in the 4 a.m. club, and then I tried to get up at 7 a.m. And of course, when you have kids, that changes because they can disrupt your sleep.
Yeah.
And then I tried to sort of work later. I'm pretty useless. Sort of any good ideas. My brain, in fact, is started to slow down now. I'm not as fast, I'm not as sharp after about 2:30, 3 o'clock. Right. And 5 hours sleep, it's just not sustainable. Okay, look, if you don't work out, and if you're 65 and you've got a low heart rate and you've got a low metabolism, maybe you can, but you're not a loser if you don't get up early. It's what you get done in the day. And understanding, there's a lot of research now and a lot of books. They're finding out that there's different types of people with different. So some people are the sort of the classic 7:30 till 10 o'clock. That's the main one. The entrepreneurs tend to be the 4 hour 5 a.m.ers, but they go to bed early. And then you get the artists and the creatives who get up really late but work till 2 in the morning. Yeah. And you've got to know which one you are, and you've got to test food, and you've got to test when you get up and when you go to bed, and you've got to test when you're inspired and on it. I tested all the coffees, so like I don't like anything other than Costa coffee. I'll have the same amount of shots, have the same type of coffee, because you have a coffee that makes you feel twitchy instead of buzzed, and I know you're big into that space as well, and finding out what works for you.
Yeah. Well, Rob, it's been a great interview. I could talk for hours, and I only got through about a third of my questions, but maybe we'll arrange another time. Sure. But thank you very much for the podcast. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matt.
And best of luck.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.